There is a song that I love called I Don't Want to Be Funny Anymore by Lucy Dacus. And in this song, she basically just lists off a bunch of other things that she could be known for besides her humor. She says, I could be the artist, I could be the cute one, I could be the gossipy person, I could even just be a band's biggest fan. If it will give me some kind of identity outside of my ability to make people laugh. And of course, I love that song because I relate to it very strongly. I don't say it all the time, but when I do feel like saying it, that song is ready to just take the words out of my mouth, is that sometimes I don't want to be funny anymore. I have been a funny person throughout pretty much my entire life. And it's been one of the biggest things that people really know me for. If people were asked to describe me, a lot of the times that's at the very top of the list, if not like second or third. It's just something that is a part of me. Humor. And it has been a little bit trying in my adult years. I feel like it's been trying my entire life, but I have really put up a fight in rebellion of being the funny person anymore. And it feels weird because in one breath, being a funny person is considered a good thing. And it warrants positive responses from people to be funny a lot of the time. And it makes people want to talk to you. It can serve a lot of good purposes. But it's very, very difficult being the funny person. Having that be what people primarily know you for. And in this video, I guess I just want to talk about my history of being the funny person, as well as some reasons why it's not fulfilling for me. And maybe finish with some level-headed ways that I can address this going forward in a way that doesn't swing into extremes. So I've been the funny kid since childhood, pretty much. I mean, I was telling jokes pretty much as early as I could talk. And I'm tempted to say that they weren't funny jokes, but, I mean, humor is very, very subjective. I wasn't always my humor's gotten a lot smarter, I guess is the point that I want to make. But the thing is also, like, to call myself a funny person, it's just that, it is so subjective, and what one person finds hilarious, another person could find not funny at all. But I just find that there is a general trend of people finding me funny. Maybe I'm not funny from a universal perspective, but I am funny from a general consensus. It is just something that has always been there. And I know some reasons why. My mom and my dad were they're both very funny people. Different kinds of humor. And in my dad's case, a lot of very cynical, not very virtuous humor. But still, like, my family was always cracking jokes and always loving SNL and stand-up comedians and stuff like a lot of us do. I had good feedback from my environment telling me, yes, keep being funny. And also, I was performing from a very young age. I was pretty much born on the stage, in church plays and then school plays and then some professional stuff. And the performer in me found that I could get the fulfillment of making people laugh even when I couldn't be on the stage. Like, that was how I would get that performance energy going. It would be telling people some jokes. And it's just always been there. It's always been something that I get known for very, very quickly when I join a new group of people. And it's been very intentional. Like, I've wanted people in the past to find me funny as quickly as possible, so I'm figuring out the best way. Maybe it's a little observation of the circumstances we're in that's humorously put, or it's a pop culture reference, or maybe I have a pretty good ear and mind for puns, and so I can find those pretty easily. I'm good not only at telling funny jokes, but also at gauging what kind of sense of humor people have and catering my jokes to that sense of humor, you know? I'm good at relating to people best in terms of what makes them laugh. So, throughout just about every big friend group that I've been in, I have kind of been the funny friend. The funny friend. I like that in the age of the internet, we've now put, you know, we're so good at classifying people's identities. And I think the funny friends in all these friend groups are all finding some comfort in connecting with each other online because it's a level of connection that they don't find in their actual friend groups. In some ways, being the funny friend in a group is awesome because you are the person that people turn to for their entertainment when there isn't a TV or a phone around, which is pretty rare, almost never these days, but you get what I mean. If there's a dead space that needs to be filled, people love that they have somebody nearby to fill it with a good old knee slapper. And, I mean, we associate being funny with being likable and entertaining. And when not just one person, but when your entire friend group, like when things get quiet and you make a joke and everybody starts laughing at it, I don't know that I get a bigger rush of dopamine from just about anything that I can appropriately talk about here. I have just felt on top of the world in those groups when I feel like I have fulfilled my duty of being the funny friend. And being the funny friend is not altogether fulfilling. And it doesn't really make you feel connected to your friend group at the end of the day. Maybe you can have individual friends that you have some sort of deeper connection with. You know, when all the noise dies down and you can just have a conversation with them. But when you're the funny friend in the friend group, you don't generally feel like you're connected to people, but you feel that your persona is. Like you feel that the performer in you has a good connection with these people, but there's something deeper inside of you that isn't connecting with them. And you can even feel great while you're around those friends because they're giving you that positive feedback of laughter. But then when you go home at the end of the day, there's just like an emptiness that doesn't go away, where you wonder if anybody really knows who you are, or if they even care to. And that's not particular to being the funny friend, it's just that humor is such a big bandage on that emptiness that I think a lot of us feel. And it's a it's a bandage that convinces you that it's fully healing the problem. But it isn't. It isn't, and you don't tend to feel very fulfilled or connected when you are the funny friend in a group of people. Or friend, whatever. The funny person, you know, whether it's the workplace or a classroom, whatever it is. Humor is kind of a way of finding certainty. And I think that might be another reason why I have gone to it so consistently, why it's been a big defense mechanism for me. Is because I feel uncomfortable around people a lot of the time because I am worried what they are thinking about me. Or if I'm not worried, I just want to know. I want to reassure myself. And it's just like humor is the best test of people's approval. Because you can sense a real, genuine, authentic laugh when you hear it. And so presenting somebody with a joke is kind of like a check yes or no, do you approve of me? And the laughter or lack thereof will either check yes or no, respectively. It feels great to get that feedback, and the problem with being a funny friend is that when you don't get it, when it's taken away from you, it just feels like the worst thing ever. It feels like absolute death to tell a joke that doesn't go over well. You just feel like you are not fulfilling your role in this group, and in some ways you are not fulfilling your role just as a person, because that is where you have put all of your value, all of your identity. Even though another person in the group could tell a joke that isn't funny and probably feel fine because they didn't have that expectation for themselves. Or people could just classify themselves as like, no, I'm just not a very funny person. Like that's just not exactly one of my skill sets. And so then when you don't get that, you end up like doubling down on your seeking in a lot of those, because like, I have to get the laugh. You people don't understand. So I'm gonna keep coming up with all these funny little observations and pulling all these jokes out of the air and just trying harder and harder and harder, and you end up annoying people. You end up coming off as very, very desperate. And if you're really, really pushing in some of those situations, you also end up hurting people's feelings with your humor. Humor can really connect us, but trying to inappropriately make light of a serious situation, or I don't know, just the way that you phrase a joke, it can cut people so badly, and it can make you look like such a jerk because you were sitting there with a big old smile on your face while they felt very put down. Yeah, you can end up annoying people or hurting their feelings or doing the opposite of what you feel like your humor is supposed to do. Another thing is that when you stop being funny as the funny friend, it almost just feels like you cease existing. Because in this friend group, you have put up this persona of the performer, of the jester. And when he stops performing, what is there left? You feel like you aren't allowed to be boring. You aren't allowed to be the standard, boring, flawed person that we all are when you stop telling jokes. Which is fine. I mean, you have to accept that about yourself at some point, is that you're not terrific, because nobody's really terrific when you get down to it. You spend enough time with anybody, you realize they are just a person. And it's just that humor, again, is just a great big bandage for dealing with that and for finding that within yourself. Why would I dig deeper to find out who I am besides the humor when the humor serves me so well? Humor is almost a great way of escaping your actual true self in a lot of ways, because your true self can be ugly and hard to deal with when you get a real hard glance at it sometimes. I remember one time I was with this girl. Long story, but basically, we were on a date that wasn't going very well. Towards the beginning of it, I had done the like, what's on your shirt, and then like flick them in the face. Although I wouldn't actually touch people. It's more just a frustration that they fell for. They're like, ah, darn, that was kind of my thing with a lot of people for some years. And she didn't like when I first did it, and she was like, please don't ever do that again. But I didn't take her all that seriously. She phrased it in a way, or maybe I just wasn't receptive to it. I don't know. I didn't take it all that seriously. It was just so automatic that I did that with people that I later did it again, and she got really, really mad at me, and she like threw a bit of a tantrum that she later apologized for. She said I was a bit out of line, but it was warranted and valid. She asked me to stop doing it. I didn't. And, I'm trying to explain myself. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, and she's like, you're just really annoying me. And I know that you're just the funny guy, And that's when it really, really hit me. I'm just the funny guy. Ooh, man, no. No, that's not who I want to be. Was she accurate or not? I don't know. But it gave me an idea of what I don't want to be, which is just the funny guy. And she was like, I just don't get why you do that when I told you not to. And I just, without thinking about it, I said, it is a social defense because I'm scared of people really seeing me, so I continuously make jokes and throw all these little one-liners out there and, pull these practical gags on people because I don't know how to talk to people. And it's just one of those times when you say something out loud without thinking and you really hear yourself. And you hear how true that is in a situation especially that has a lot of adrenaline running. When you're very, very high strung, that can be such a big truth serum for yourself. And just like the best mirror that you can find. And so, not just from that, but, some other things. Getting into some spiritual stuff. And realizing how damaging ego can be for you and realizing how much I've used humor to feed my ego, I have really made a concerted effort to stop being funny since about 2018. The past almost 5 years, I've really been trying to distance myself from my humor. It was very dramatic in the early days that I was like, I want to stop being funny, period. I will never try to make a joke ever again. I'm not so much like that now. I have a bit more of a healthy relationship to it. But I am still moving away from humor, at least as an identity. And that's been very, very hard to deal with. And I had a big personality crisis for 2 or 3 years that I think that I'm only finally starting to reconstruct. Or like I started to reconstruct and I have a solid foundation of a personality that is not strictly a humorous one. And I'm finally finding it in a way that is fulfilling. Now, of course, because humor is so deeply embedded in me, humor can still be a big part of my personality. Some days it's a pretty huge part of my personality. But it isn't everything. And I don't give people the expectation when I meet them that I am going to be funny all the time. Or that I'm even going to try to be. I'd rather be boring. I'd rather give the expectation that I'm going to be boring. Because I will come up with some funny jokes every once in a while. And those jokes will seem way more funny because I haven't bombarded you with 10,000 others. There's a real lack of desperation in my humor. I think, from having made a concerted effort to stop being funny. And I think everything about my art has reflected that. I am in an acting class where we get to choose our own scenes, and pretty rarely do I choose a pure comedy scene. I can do it well whenever I bring it in. It's partly, I don't bring it in because I want to challenge myself, and I don't find comedy acting all that challenging. It comes very, very naturally to me. In my music, when I started off rapping, I was kind of leaning more into being a comedic, like Lonely Island, Lil Dicky kind of thing. Making raps that were about food and animals and, silly little things. And I could still do those sometimes. That could be fun. But it's not primarily what I do. I don't go into writing a rap song thinking this needs to elicit a laugh. I remember when I started in my acting class, my teacher was like, hey, you're really good at comedic acting. And I am kind of thinking like, well, yeah, I already sort of knew that, but I wasn't going to say that. But she really encouraged me to just lean more into that because that was my biggest strength. And to some degree, I'm like, it probably is my biggest strength. And no. I don't want to lean into my biggest strength if it means me being unhappy. And me being unfulfilled. It's just never my goal anymore to get a laugh out of people. If I am trying to make anybody laugh, it's generally myself. It's something that I just personally find funny. And I'm not the first comedian, comedic actor, comedic writer, whatever, to discover this, but it really is so much more fulfilling. If you are going to use humor, it's for the sake of making you laugh. It's for the sake of entertaining you. And the great thing is that nobody has a perfectly particular sense of humor. So if you find it funny, somebody else will find it funny anyway. Maybe a lot of the problem with my humor in the past is that it really has been from a place of trying to please everybody, so let's cover all our bases of make my humor as approachable and digestible as possible. In some circumstances, or at least let's make it as extreme as possible so people can't ignore it. Man, I really went into some edgelord phases when I first started posting videos. Not on this channel, on my previous Instagram. Because that was what I knew. I knew that being shocking was gonna get people at least to turn their heads. But again, it came from such a fake place where it's like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be just like edgy and offensive for the sake of being edgy and offensive, at least not all the time. I don't want that to be what people expect from me. And so I couldn't be a stand-up comedian. I've even done stand-up comedy in the past. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for that art form. Because I think stand-up comedians are the bravest performers. Even a bad stand-up comedian, I think, is braver than like a great singer a lot of the time. Like, I think that what they did mustered up more willpower, or required more willpower. Because that is an art form that demands a response of the audience, or where the audience's response immediately dictates how it's going over. Somebody can play guitar, and I mean, I'll use the example of the open mic that I go to. It's anybody can come in with any talent that they want to. Somebody comes in, plays guitar, say they're not very good at it. You can kind of still sit there and be there for it and be like, yeah, this is, it's not great, but it doesn't cause me offense. It doesn't ask anything of me. I'm not uncomfortable watching it. You can't really passively be there for somebody who's not doing well at a stand-up routine. I remember one time a kid was doing a stand-up routine and I left because I was uncomfortable, and I turned the corner and I see there are a whole bunch of other people waiting because they don't want to be in the room while this bad stand-up routine is going on. But those people, even the worst ones, have my absolute utmost respect. I did stand-up a little bit. It's funny, I'm so humor-oriented, but I barely even dabbled in stand-up. I did 2 stand-up sessions, I think, in high school. And they both went over pretty well. One of them went over really well. One of them went over okay to good. And just even the okay to good was so harrowing for me, I never touched it ever again. I just couldn't, I couldn't deal with it. And I could probably get back into it now, but I just don't have a lot of desire to. It's just not really for me to have to partake in an art form where I have to be funny. I'm just expected to make you laugh. But man, y'all stand-up comedians out there, my hat is perpetually off to you, because what you do is so hard and so scary and requires so much bravery. And I don't even care if you're good or not. You automatically have my stamp of approval just by virtue of you're even trying. What I want to get to, what I want to just always remind myself, is that humor is a tool. Humor is a useful skill set. And it can do great things. It has value outside of just serving you. It can do great things for the world. It can lighten a mood when everybody's feeling terrible. It can connect people. How many times have we found a friend because we're sitting there, somebody references a funny show that we like, says a one-liner from a sitcom, and we turn to them, we're like, oh, you watched that? Oh my gosh, have you seen it? And then It connects people. It brings people together that otherwise could have been separate. A lot of the time, it invokes a great truth that people either couldn't say or couldn't hear properly until it was in a funny format. In some ways, there are stand-up comedians who bring greater truth to the world than even the most respectable news sources. Because they not only say the truth, but they're willing to do it in a human, sometimes irreverent way that's more relatable and just entertaining, so we want to, it spreads easier. Comedians can be some of the wisest people that we have at their best. And just humor it's marvelous. I wouldn't want to live in a world without humor. Charlie Chaplin said, "A day without laughter is a day wasted." And I completely agree. I almost want to do a big existential look and picking apart what exactly is humor, what's the best way that we can define it. But that would require me to sit down and do some more thinking. I just want to talk about humor as it relates to myself. Yeah, humor is a great tool. And it is not everything. It is not everything by a long shot. When we hear people say, somebody's more than their looks, your looks don't define you, I like to think that humor is very similar. I am more than my humor. It's a great tool that I can use, but it is not me. And it never will be. Just as is any skill that I have, I can put it down and I will keep existing and I will still be a perfectly whole human, even when I'm not utilizing it. And unlike in those early days of veering away from it back in 2018, even 2019, 2020, I don't want to be anti-humor. I don't want to be anti-anything. I don't want to be actively feeding aversions in the same way that I don't want to keep attaching that stuff to myself. And that's not particular to humor. I've tried to replace humor with other things, and I don't want to do that either. I don't want to try to be any other identity. Whether it's some vapid ones like I'm hot or I'm athletic, or even ones that are rooted in some real value to me. I don't want to attach the identity of being an artistic person or being a spiritual person to myself. It's great that those are facets of my being, but they are just facets. And I have to keep digging deeper to figure out who am I even without those things. Who am I without any identity? When you get down to it, identity itself is a very useful tool. But it isn't everything. Yeah. I can feel at peace with or without humor. I'd like it to be there. And I don't need it to be. And I think that that is about the greatest freedom that I can afford myself. Even the little pleasantries of life and myself, I can comfortably live without.